You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
Hey, welcome back to Ask the Master Auto Technician with James and Anna Morris. I've got Stephen Lange. He's one of my guests. Well, he calls ever so often. Stephen, you said you've, what did you say you did? Over 10,000 cars you've actually looked at or appraised or done something in your lifetime to determine the value.
I wish it was my lifetime. It's a single year.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Only in 1 year, 10,000 cars. Okay, I apologize. So you get to look at a lot of cars, good, the bad, and the ugly. Is that a good saying? You know, about the cars you look at.
Some are definitely worth every single ounce of their rolling being, and others are worth more dead than alive.
That's true. I've seen those cars out there as well. The question I ask people, and I try to, and this is a maintenance show, try to get people to talk about maintenance. How important is maintenance during the first 100,000 miles of a car? Because that's when you see them normally when they're being sold. And usually, what's the average mileage, would you say, on a car you're looking at? 100,000, 80,000, 120? I don't know.
No, it's usually a little bit less than 100,000.
Okay.
It can range generally from 20,000 to 200,000, but there are more younger vehicles at the wholesale auctions than there are older vehicles.
So by an average, so I guess a car that's what they seem to be averaging 12,000 miles a year in your part of the country, 10,000 miles a year, maybe more. I don't know. So if a car is 5 years old, you're probably talking about a car that's 60,000 miles on it. Somewhere in that area.
Yeah, right around there. That sounds about right.
Okay.
I would put it this way: the first 100,000 miles are a lot like the first 40 years of your life. There are some 40-year-olds that look stunning, and there are some 40-year-olds that look like human train wrecks.
We're talking about Keith Richards, who's still alive.
I would think that maintenance, to be frank with you, is extremely critical. It's literally the fluids, the filters, the bloodstream. And the filtration we have within our own body is the same that's true for a car. Without taking care of those things, your body will go kaput.
Well, and I was thinking about Keith Richards. When he was 40 years old, he looked like he was 80, and he's still alive now. But he's the exception to the rule when it comes to people about taking care of their bodies. But you're telling me that, and I've seen this as well, that how people determine or how they maintain their car determines also how much that car is going to be worth at resale value on the open market, or it just really doesn't matter? Do some people just don't care and they just don't do anything?
Oh, it definitely does. In fact, if you have a vehicle that you can say that you maintain the oil, you change the oil every 5,000, you have records of it, and you did the coolant at 50,000, you did the transmission fluid, you did the air filters, you can get around $1,000 to $2,000 more for that vehicle. And a lot of the stuff I just mentioned is stuff that oftentimes, especially with the average vehicle on the road being around 11 years old now, it's stuff that you can, for the most part, easily do within reason if you have some mechanical aptitude or willingness to learn.
And that's the catch. A lot of people have no mechanical aptitude or willingness to learn. That seems to be the hard part, because a lot of the things that you have to do right, people don't want to do because it's not what they used to do 20 years ago, on how to take care of a car, like antifreeze or changing the transmission fluid. But there's some things they can do by draining and filling, but some things they cannot. What do you see as the most overlooked thing that people do as far as maintenance? It gets overlooked when you go to see a car that comes up, and it seems to be over and over again. Is it tires? Is it transmission fluids? Or what seems to be the most overlooked thing you can think of?
I would say it's transmission fluid, and I would also say that a vehicle of 20 years ago wouldn't go through the same level of neglect that takes place now. And I think one of the main reasons for it is we're now in an era where there are steel transmissions where you can't even get access to the fluid you need easily. You really do need a full-blown lift.
Right.
And you need somebody who has specialized tools.
Right. Tell me about
to
it.
just even get access to it.
Yeah, BMWs are not fun to change transmission fluids on, or Mercedes. You have to have the equipment to pump it through, or to supply it and take it out. There's no quick, easy way. There's no inspection tube. Transmission dipstick to put inside there. You just have two holes, one to fill and one to take it out. That seems to be the biggest thing I notice about those. And people say, you mean you're going to charge X amount of dollars to do that? I go, yeah, it ain't cheap, especially on BMW or Mercedes, Because some of that fluid, like 5 gallons, costs like $600 just for 5 gallons of that stuff. That stuff is.
Well, the thing is that 10 years ago, BMW and Mercedes kind of led on to what has now become a greater era of keeping people away from their cars. BMW and Mercedes, they started to put in sensors instead of simple dipsticks. They started to more or less try to have the computer control every single function of the car, which sounds actually pretty good, but the only problem is the parameters that they used for it really weren't conducive towards longevity.
That's true.
And the fact is now you go and get a transmission fluid replaced on a late model Nissan with a CVT, and you need specialized tools to do it. The average mechanically inclined person can't do it. They need to have a specialist do it. You try to get it done at a dealership now, it's over $300.
Every bit of it. Now, CVT fluid's expensive. It's $25-$30 a quart. It's very, and you're talking about 8 to 12 quarts depending on what you got. But and that's something I'm seeing a lot of people not changing the fluid in their CVT transmission because, and then they wonder when they get about 100,000 miles why they got to spend $7,000 to replace the transmission because can you rebuild a CVT transmission? I don't think it can be done.
No, most of them can't be rebuilt. I've heard that the Jatco transmissions can be rebuilt. By the way, folks, Jatco is kind of like the first generation that Nissan and Chrysler used for vehicles such as the Dodge Caliber. That's one version, and the Jeep Patriot.
Right.
But it's incredibly expensive, and a lot of it has to do with access to the actual components. You more or less almost have to rely on vehicles being wrecked.
Right.
In order to have them replaced. And the fact is most of the ones that are wrecked have not had their transmission fluids changed. So you're really back to square one with a lot of these vehicles. Now, it's a shame because we already licked this 20 years ago. We already had, Dexron Mercon. It worked perfectly well. You had a 25-year-old Volvo. There was one bolt that you had to remove to change the oil, one bolt to change to drain the fluid. Out of about, I would say, a third of the transmission fluid that you need, but you could easily do it. And even vehicles of today, you go with a Mazda, for example, Mazda 5, they stuck with a one-bolt idea. The first Honda CR-Vs had one simple bolt that you twisted. You didn't even need a measured bolt. You could just use a 3/8 socket wrench to get it done. And now it's as if they want to complicate vehicles to add expense whenever possible.
I agree with it. I think it's mainly to keep people out from underneath the car. Is that due to liability reasons, or they don't want them fooling with them? You think the manufacturer says, this is the best way to keep the money in our industry where they have to come back to the dealership? I don't know what the reasoning is, but it sure seems that way, that people can't even change their oils or fluids on a lot of these things anymore.
Well, one reason has to do with the fact that they have higher fuel economy standards now versus back, way back when. That contributes a bit to this, but you still can have ease of access. You still can have a simple bolt do the job.
Right.
And what's going on now is that the bolts have disappeared. And the reason why is not because, you need to have those bolts disappear. It's because they want to keep independent mechanics, do-it-yourself folks away from the vehicle. They already know that the average Joe isn't going to, do the maintenance themselves for the most part.
You're right about that. Yeah, it does take a specialized tools to do these jobs. Just very simple things take a lot of specialized tools. Changing your transmission fluid, changing your coolant correctly, even brake fluid.
I was going to say even oil filters have special adapters.
Oh, yeah, on our oil filters, 10 years ago I had 2 flexible wrenches to take oil filters off. Now I've got a socket set of assorted sizes to be just to be able to take oil filters off. They're sockets. They're really sockets. I'm going, who would have ever thought this? It's crazy, but you have to have at least I would venture to say, just to be able to take oil filters off and on, you have to have at least $500 worth of sockets to take all the different oil filters off. And I don't think I do not think I'm exaggerating, Stephen, when I say that. That's how many different sockets and tools to be able to take BMW, Mercedes, Volvo, Chevrolet. Even Chevrolet has gone to the Mercedes type filters of years ago where you drop in cartridge. I never thought I would see that 20 years ago, but it's common now. Just about every car is like that pretty much now. It's pretty amazing what's going on. So, but do you see an improvement
for a guy
though?
like me that tends to be a little bit conservative with his maintenance. I own a dealership, and long story short is I hate it when I can't do the maintenance on my own vehicles in terms of easy stuff.
Right.
If it takes forever and a day to get the old coolant out and the new coolant in, if I can't, I had an Audi A4 that, you know,
I'm sorry to hear that.
damn Volkswagen for making such thing with amazing potential. It's just such a rolling crap box.
Like I said, I'm sorry to hear you have an A4.
It still has a lot, but I'm praying every day.
Every day. Hey, Stephen, we got to go. That was enjoyable. I enjoyed talking to you. You're a pleasure to talk to. You really are. How's your boy doing? We got about 10, 15 seconds left. You doing okay?
Yep, he's doing fine. He's busy killing people on GTA.
Whatever that is, I'm sure it's harmless. All right, well, thank you so much for calling out. Stephen Lange, he's up there, and where men are men and sheep are nervous, up somewhere in Georgia someplace in the dark woods. I have no idea.
Country.
All right, you be good, and I'll talk to you later. We'll be right back.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.